Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on our live stream from the Florida School of Massage community. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Christina Polney, and I'm here with Dr. Ben Benjamin. And behind the scenes, we have Sarah Thompson and Chrissy Martinez, who I'm so thankful for, because without them, we would not be here. And we have just been motivated and inspired to continue to get creative and find ways to stay in community, in connection with one another through these ongoing extraordinary times. And of course, we're not at the school, but rather coming to you from our respective homes. I'm here in Gainesville, and Ben is coming to us from Massachusetts. And of course, we're so looking forward to resuming classes as soon as we can. And I know we have a variety of listeners from all different backgrounds, and some of you are very familiar with our community. And for those of you who are brand new, I would just like to say welcome. And yes, we are a massage school, and yet it is so much more than that. Many of our past students and professionals continue to return to Gainesville to not only explore continuing education, but also do advanced trainings or just dip into a place of ongoing learning of not only body work, but also the exploration of our inner world through this vehicle of touch, awareness, communication, both verbal and nonverbal. And we are still all working from home, and just have really been looking forward to this time together. Now, we're going to have about an hour to talk to a legend and leader in our profession, taking a look at a career that spans a lifetime. Ben is a massage therapist with a Ph.D. in sports medicine. He's an author, Orthopedic Manual Therapy teacher. He's a SAVI communication skills trainer, and also expert witness in cases of sexual misconduct and abuse, as well as injury-related cases in the massage and bodywork field. More recently, he has built an educational platform that offers over 140 courses by leaders in our field, including himself, Tracy Walton, Judith Walker, Carol Osborne, Whitney Lowe, Ruth Werner, and others. And topics include orthopedic manual therapy, working with cancer patients, pregnancy, ethics, neuromuscular therapy, fibromyalgia, research, and so much more. So we'll reserve time for your questions and comments towards the last 15 minutes or so. And I know you're either joining us on Facebook or YouTube, so please type your comments or questions into the chat, and it's our goal to interact with as many of you as we can, and Sarah and Chrissy will be monitoring those questions for us. And if you're joining us on YouTube, you can also go ahead and like this video and subscribe to our channel by hitting the red button below. And remember to hit the notification button as well to get a reminder. And for those of you on Facebook, you can like this video and follow us there. So again, my name is Christina, and I've been a part of the Florida School of Massage community since 1992, and I couldn't be more excited to be joined by Dr. Ben Benjamin. It's just an honor for him to be speaking to our community. I have met all of his books, and they're all tattered from over the years, using them every day almost in my practice, especially when I was first starting out. And now, Ben, you've been a part of our Florida School of Massage history for many years. So many of our instructors and administrators have trained with you, either in orthopedics, executive coaching, communication skills, the list goes on. So I know we have some listeners who may be new to the Florida School of Massage community. And of course, some listeners know you very well. So before we move into our discussion, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what originally inspired you to study massage all those years ago?
Well, I was 13 years old, and I was studying to be a professional dancer at the High School of Performing Arts in New York City. I jumped in the air, came down on one foot, and I injured my back, and my life started to change at that moment. sometimes bad things make for good things. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't walk, I couldn't sit, I couldn't stand without a lot of pain. And then a professional dancer at the Metropolitan Opera said, "Oh, you should go to see Dr. Kagan." I said, "Okay, well, give me the number." And I found out he wasn't really a doctor, but
Huh.
everybody called him a doctor because he helped all these people. He had the most gifted hands that I still have ever experienced. He was a
Wow.
master. It always felt like a privilege to be treated by him. And I was a kid, 13, 14, 15. So he treated me, and I was very, I loved the work he did with me, so I told everybody. And so I
Mm,
must have referred him 100 people, my friends, and I would go with people, and I would watch him work for 6, 7 years. And I was actually being trained at that time. I didn't even know I was being trained, but that's what was happening.
sure. Wow.
So he kind of became like my second father.
Mm,
And he was it was just an inspiring person, and I really loved him. And he trained me really one-on-one. And at 18, I joined a dance company called Les Grands Ballets Canadiens in Montreal. I moved to Montreal, and I began treating all different dancers in the company and predicting sort of when they would get injured by looking at their alignment. I
wow.
began it was 1963, I think, and I started charging $5. It seems like a long time ago. And then it went to 7, and then to 10, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how I got into it.
That's amazing. So now your career spans 56 years. I think it'd be really interesting for our listeners, especially new practitioners, if you could share some of the progression of your career over the years.
Sure. So after Montreal, I was invited to use a small office at Lincoln Center, treating dancers in the American Ballet Theater Company in New York City, because I was referred from somebody who knew them in Canada. And then I also opened my own practice in New York City when I was about 26 years old. It was about 1964. And I maintained my relationship with Kagan, and we would go out to dinner periodically. And one day at dinner, we were at the Indian restaurant on 93rd Street. I remember what I was eating. And he invited me to work for him. And I nearly cried. I mean, I was like, Jesus, he had some big ballerina dancer and he didn't have time for her, and he wanted to sort of expand. And so I was in an office right next to him at his office on 71st Street, and I worked for him 3 days a week, and I worked for myself in my office 2 days a week, and I was ecstatic.
Amazing.
So that was, I remember he would go away. He was the president of the Freemasons in France. He was French. And so he would go away, and I would earn money for him. I remember I went to the airport and I brought thousands of dollars in cash, and checks to give him, just to show him, I just loved him. So,
Yeah.
And then later that year, I went to a dance concert, and it was very inspiring. It was an avant-garde company by a woman named Anna Halprin in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I right after it, I threw a party in my house for the company, and they invited me to come and teach in Marin County, right near San Francisco. And I was 23 years old, and so I remember sitting on the grass with this woman, creating my first massage technique, sort of watching myself work, and then writing down what I saw that I had learned from Kagan and adapted. And that gave me an opportunity really to teach for the first time. And I created a 6-week course. It was all outside on a beautiful deck, looking at the sky and the trees. And we worked 3 times a week for 6 weeks. And my work was so different than anybody else around at that time, I guess in California, that after 1 week, I had a full-time private practice. In the evenings, I would start at 5:30, give half-hour treatments till like 10:30 at night or 10 o'clock at night. And, it was kind of amazing. And then when I went back home, people asked me to come back. And so I started commuting to San Francisco. And I would get on a plane at 9 o'clock. I would get in at 2. They would pick me up. I would give my first treatment at 3 o'clock in San Francisco. So, that got old after a year, and so I stopped. But it was an exciting, kind of time.
Sure, yeah.
And then I began to teach in New York, and there were some people who were very talented, and I began to train them privately, one-on-one. And the way I did training was I did everything. They would work on my body.
Mm.
And many years later, I opened my school, the Muscular Therapy Institute, and central to the training was what we called the private lesson. And I didn't really know how anybody else could really do it because that's the way I started. And every student in the school, in my small school, maybe 30, 40 students, they would have 3 or 4 private lessons a month where they would work on a teacher in addition to the group classes. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize it at the time, but that kind of training was very unique.
Yeah.
And you know, we graduated great therapists because if
Mm.
somebody touched you with cold, freezing hands, they were counseled out of the school immediately. So we really just trained people that were really good.
Yeah.
And I ran the school for just over 30 years.
Wow. When in your career, so when did you actually decide to start your school? Like what
It was
was that process?
1974. It was
Uh-huh.
1974. I came from teaching some of these small classes that I was teaching for 10 weeks or something. I decided to start a school. So I did, you know. It's very kind of informal at first.
Yeah. Sounds like you were really a trailblazer. Some of the things that you're describing are things that we also incorporate at the Florida School of Massage. For example, students always work on instructors throughout the course of their program. But it sounds like you were way ahead of your time, and no wonder you remember what you had for lunch that day with Dr. Kagan, right? It was kind of like a turning point in your life.
Yeah, it
like,
was. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So, all those years that you had your school, how would you characterize what was important for your school?
Well, the school was really about how to become a better human being. And I
Mm,
think that's what we have in common. You know, that's really the massage was just a vehicle.
yeah.
And each class stayed together for their entire training. And I designed a very long training. It was like 3 years, and we met only on some weekends. And I
Mm,
did that for about 12 years. And then we converted to being a weekday school, and we
mhm,
put it down to a 2-year program. People came, you know, almost every day, or 3 days a week, or 4 days a week. And the core of the program was really communication skills, boundaries, how to run a business, a business plan, ethics, understanding sexuality and how that interplayed with your work, you know, what was appropriate, what wasn't. The other part, you know, of course, was the hands-on techniques that I developed from my work with Kagan, my mentor, and I called what I did muscular therapy.
mhm,
And one interesting thing sort of that happened when I had the school is that Harvard Health Services had a clinic which included massage therapy. And
mm,
after a series of inappropriate behavior by therapists they hired, they decided to only hire people from my school, from MTI, only my graduates, because they never had problems with them because
mm.
of their extensive training in communication and ethical behavior. So that was a nice thing.
Yeah, and I love what you said about just teaching people how to become better human beings. I remember all those years ago when I was a student, I thought that I was coming to learn massage only. You think of it as one thing, and yet there are so many different aspects to that personal growth factor that you don't really know until you're in the school, right? All the
Yeah.
things that you need to learn about, as you say, boundaries, healthy boundaries, and all of that. So I'm not surprised that Harvard wanted your students. One of the other things, Ben, that I have just enjoyed studying with you is SAVI, which stands for the System for Analyzing Verbal Interaction. And after opening your school, is that when you began incorporating the SAVI method into your work?
That came a little bit later. I still had the school, but
Mm,
I was teaching my own sort of communication skills first, and then I discovered SAVI. And really, you kind of study things you have to learn. And I
yeah.
didn't start out as a great communicator particularly, and I had to learn it. You know, actually, if I was in a restaurant, people would later tell me they would leave because I spoke so loud, and I had
Oh,
no idea I was doing that. So, you know, not, you know, some porcupiney things happening there. Uh,
yeah.
but I did have a talent for some reason, for mediating conflict between people. And our school, we had very long, like week-long retreats at beautiful places at the beach or in the mountains. Like we went twice a year, once in the summer, once in the winter. And we went to this place in Delaware called Rehoboth Beach, and students
Mm,
lived in a beautiful houses together by the ocean. And we did classes in the morning, And then we took off the afternoon so people could go to the beach, and we did classes in the evening. And it was a wonderful time. And each class lived together in a house. And when you live together, interpersonal kind of trouble emerges. And then I did my conflict kind of coaching. We would hope they got in trouble, and then that's how they would learn a lot of things. And then in 1980, I tried to retire. I had some very close friends in Oregon. I moved to Ashland, Oregon, and I would come back, just once or twice a year. And I found a teacher there and studied communication skills more formally. And then 2 years later, I moved back east, and I worked both in New York City and in Boston. And from then on, I taught communication skills at the school 3 or 4 nights a week. I also taught the general public. 2 days a week was in New York, and 2 or 3 days I was in Boston. And almost 2 decades later, in the late 1990s, that's when I found SAVI and realized how much I did not know. I was a kind of beginner, and I didn't know it. And I wanted to know more, and I actually became the first person that they officially trained in the SAVI method, because I said to them, you guys are crazy. I mean, this is a jewel. How come you're not training people? So we worked together for a couple of years to create the program. And then I was the first person with a friend of mine to go through it. And I felt like I learned how to be a communication detective. And, the SAVI system gives you a method kind of to figure out what goes wrong in any conversation when it really turns bad, and also what makes it go right. And it trains also people how to communicate. And it was very exciting. And you can always change the way you communicate if you study hard and you work hard enough. And it was a really exciting period in my life.
Yes. Yeah, and we've had the benefit of having you here at the Florida School of Massage. And I love what you said about, describing that you're not necessarily a great communicator in the beginning before you had training. I think that's true for so many of us when we're young. We don't necessarily learn how to be an effective communicator or how to feel empowered in our communication. And I found the SAVI method to be one of those, as you say, amazing jewels to really empower students and our coworkers, all of us that work at the Florida School of Massage.
Let me interrupt you there. I remember I was sitting with Paul and Josie in their house, and I was just telling Paul about it. I was just excited about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to sell him on it or anything. I was just talking about it. He said, well, we got it. He said, we got to do it. I said, well, it takes a long time. It's going to be, a long, big commitment. It's going to be expensive. He said, okay, let's do it. So it was an amazing time. It was one of the most wonderful SAVI trainings I ever did. I worked with everybody from from him, the president, to the person who cleaned the place. Every single person was involved, and it was really a very, very satisfying. And then I worked with you and others doing some supervision, and it was really exciting. It was really fun.
Yes, yeah. We were very fortunate to have you here, and hopefully we'll have you back again. Did you also teach that at your school in Massachusetts, the SAVI method?
No, because it was later that I learned it, and the school was sort of set. I offered it as outside courses that people would come to, and I incorporated some of it. But by that time, I wasn't teaching all the classes. We had like 300 students, and there were others who were teaching the communication, the stuff that I had created before that. But I started teaching it all over the country and doing it for the AMTA for hundreds of people, and did all sorts of things.
Now, you're also very well known in our profession for your orthopedic manual therapy. How did you first become interested in orthopedics?
Let's see. Well, first of all, I had all of the injuries by the time I was 20. I had 2 sprained ankles, you can't walk at all, 2 sprained ankles. Kagan would banish me to the country. My mother would find somebody who would take me in the country, and I had to rest for a couple of weeks. And he treated me, but he only worked intuitively. He didn't know the things I knew, but somehow he would have 3 famous people on different tables in different rooms, and he'd be working with them, and somehow got him better. He was just an intuitive worker and he worked with a lot of people who had pain. And I thought I knew a lot about injuries in my 20s, but later I realized I really didn't know anything of substance. And in 1979, I was in a Ph.D. program in education But I changed my major to sports medicine because I met a doctor who was actually on my committee. The doctor was actually the husband of one of my students in Maryland, and he was on my, and he told me about Dr. Syriacs. And so what I did is I just changed my major and I went to a 5-day conference in orthopedic medicine with some of my graduates of my school, and it just blew me away. It just blew my mind. I mean, Syriacs could figure out what was wrong with just about anybody, and I didn't think that was possible. And he did demonstration clinics. What he did I thought was impossible, and I was determined to learn everything I could about orthopedic medicine. And after the course with Syriacs, I opened up a free clinic in New York City with a doctor friend of mine who happened to be there. And for 8 months, we saw people for free all day long for 3 days a week. And over that year, I went to the Syriacs 5-day course in Rochester, New York Medical Center 3 times. The first time, I was completely lost. There's a noise happening. I'm going to mute myself for a second.
Okay.
I live in a train. Okay. So for 8 months we saw people, and the first time I was lost. In those 5 days, Syriacs taught all the anatomy for the entire body, all the assessment testing for every part of the body, the history, the meaning of the questions, the treatments, everything, manipulation, injection, friction, everything. And he did that for the neck, the thorax, the low back, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and the hand, and the hip, and the knee, and the lower leg, the foot and ankle. And by the time you came home, you scrambled eggs brain. I mean, you didn't remember anything. He was what I call an entertainer teacher. He wanted to show you how much he knew. That's not the kind of teacher. A good teacher inspires you, and you know this stuff well, and you can do it, and you feel confident. The second time I came, I made lists of tests and everything, and I began to really understand what he was talking about. The third time I came, when he taught, he would ask these rhetorical questions that nobody knew the answer to. So he started asking questions, and I would raise my hand, and I would answer the questions. And he was pissed off because no one had ever answered the questions. So then the doctor I was working with went to a conference of orthopedic medicine, and he met this doctor that he said was really scary. And this doctor that I was working with, he was kind of a scared person. And so I knew I had to talk to this doctor. And so one day I just called him up. And he spoke to me, Dr. Angley spoke to me for 1 hour. What doctor does that? I mean, never. And that changed my life forever. He invited me, I invited him when I used to spend some time in Oregon. I invited him, maybe when I was living there, I don't know. I invited him to work with about 80 patients who were really incredible pain in every part of their body. I knew 5 doctors in those towns where I lived in Ashland, Oregon. And after 2 visits, he got almost all of them better. And some of them have been in pain for 20 years. And what I soon realized, I started following him around the country and observing him and having him treat me. What I realized was he was the world's most gifted doctor in terms of musculoskeletal pain. And I would always refer to him as coming from the 23rd century. And that if we knew what he knew now in the 23rd century, we would be doing good. And over the next 30 years, he taught me, what I thought was unknowable. And it led me to write my Listen to Your Pain book and start teaching all over the country and different parts of the world.
Wow, that's impressive. Sounds like you've had a lot of key mentors in your career.
I have some incredible mentors.
And I have to say, you are a mentor yourself now to so many. And today in 2020, you actually have an amazing online school that you've created, the Benjamin Institute, where I feel therapists could spend a large part of their career studying. It's packed with courses and resources. And how did you transition into online education?
Well, about 10 years ago, I was invited by ABMP to do a webinar. And I said, well, how many people are here? And he said, 1,500. I said, what? So after that experience, I started practicing how to do webinars. And I started, doing them for free for about 8 months till I could figure out the technology and everything. And then I started producing webinar series on work with injuries, and each webinar series had about 5 to 7 hour-long webinars, plus 3 or 4 short little ones that help people find the structure, assess it, treat it, draw it. And I did about 70 webinars myself on the low back, the neck, the shoulder, the knee, the ankle, the calf, headaches, ethics, and so forth. And over that 5 years, I also began to produce webinars, various series by other great teachers, like Tracy Walton did like 12 incredible webinars on cancer, and she did 6 on working with the heart problems and blood diseases. And another 6, she invited a whole bunch of terrific people to do hospital massage. And then Ruth Werner, as you mentioned, did one on fibromyalgia, and Carol Osborne on pregnancy. Cherise and Mo and I did one on ethics. And then I had Whitney Lowe come and do some stuff, and Tom Myers, Judith Walker, and others. And then I got the idea that I wanted to make the work more accessible to people around the country at a more affordable price. Because each webinar would cost, either just to come to one was $20 or $25. And if you bought the series of 5 or 6, that would be $100 or $150, and you only had access to it for 90 days.
Sure.
So about 5 years ago, I got the idea to start a subscription service where people would pay $29 a month, or for the year they'd get a couple of months free if they did it for a year, and they could access everything, all of these different webinars by me and other people. And it took actually 5 years to develop the platform to get it really done, and now it's sailing, and we keep and I still do a lot of stuff with it.
That's fantastic. And one of the things I love about your site that's so fantastic, it's like having a reference book at your fingertips as well. Like when you're practicing, you can just pop on there, review anatomy, look at something you're about to work on. It's pretty amazing, the amount of material that you have on there. And
if you just typed in shoulder, for example, you would come up with 30 different long webinars, short webinars, little tiny things to help you find structures, test them, treat them, etc. And the whole site, the BenjaminInstitute.com site, has over 140 hour-long courses in about 25 series. And then we have these 2 to 4 minute video clips that help you quickly learn or review, stuff that's specific, either the shoulder, the knee, the back, the ankle, how to find it, draw it, treat it, how to friction therapy it, myofascial massage, exercise therapy, all those 4 components for just about everything. You just type in what you want, type in the knee, and you get like 25 different courses, video clips, articles, and I'm always adding more and updating old courses with new information. And right now I do live webinars 2 or 3 times a month that subscribers attend for free as part of their subscription.
Yeah, I mean, so many of our listeners, myself included, we've been seeing more and more online education, especially in these extraordinary times we're in. We're doing, all kinds of continuing education is popping up online. Tell us, what's really unique about your website. I mean, you just named so many things.
I think those are the things that are unique about it. I mean, let me see what else I got here. Can I think about it? What's unique about it is it's always available. You can study for a short time if you know the material. Like we have things called crash courses. Like we're going to do one for you in a couple of weeks on the subscapularis. So we have an hour-long one on the subscapularis, but then we have a crash course if you know it already and just want to review it. It's just bang, bang. It tells you the anatomy that's important and how to test it, how to treat it, how to find it, boom, and you're done. So it's just a very unique site that it has all this incredible information, not just from me, but from other, terrific presenters.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, would you talk about the supervision you're offering as part of your website? Because I think that is very unique in our profession and something that's so needed, especially for new therapists, people just starting out in their career. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Because that's a unique, special feature.
Yeah, I instituted that many years ago, like 25, 30 years ago at my school. We used to have 10 different supervisors that would work with 8 or 10 students at a time. And it was great. But supervision is a very underutilized and much needed resource in massage therapy. And there are really 2 kinds of supervision. One is technical supervision, and one is really about the relationships that you have. And technical stuff is you just find somebody who's an experienced therapist in the kind of work you do. And this kind of supervision can help you know how to approach a certain problem or develop skills and techniques for working with a particular kind of issue, whether it's myofascial therapy or massage therapy or orthopedic manual therapy or cranial work, whatever it is, just in the technical part of what you're doing. For example, students and graduates from my orthopedic manual programs, periodically, they call me up, for a supervision consultation on how to work with a client who has a particular pain or injury that they've never seen before, or someone that's not responding to the treatment as they would expect. And then the whole other piece is really relationship supervision, often referred to as clinical supervision. The supervisor works with the therapist on how to deal with ethical and communication issues. For example, a practitioner might have a client who talks all the time, just incessantly, or asks a lot of personal questions, or asks you out to coffee every treatment. Or maybe the therapist feels attracted to the client and doesn't know what to do with those feelings.
Right.
And all of these issues should be discussed, not brushed aside as if they were inconsequential. And this is what supervision is really for, these kinds of things, clinical supervision. And at first, the supervisor responds by helping the therapist to discover their own answer, if possible, and advising, if that's more appropriate, of course.
Right.
And after an ongoing supervision group develops, the participants also respond, not just the supervisor, and they help each other. And the role of supervision in training massage therapists has been incredibly neglected. There are very few places that do it. Supervision can help practitioners deal with the feelings that often arise in the therapeutic relationship, that they develop with their clients. You develop strong feelings sometimes, and then sometimes you get in trouble. And for example, there are times when a therapist has an uncomfortable or disturbing experience when giving a client a massage session. I just had somebody call me recently, and this client had been coming for years, but something really not so great happened. The client may have said, something like an off-color joke, or said something inappropriate in a more subtle way. What happened in that case? And practitioners really need a shame-free, trustworthy environment and a trusting relationship with peers and a supervisor to review and evaluate these types of challenging and difficult experiences. And I offer live supervision as part of my $29 a month subscription service, and I've been opening it up to anyone on my mailing list for free so far. Sometimes I'm going to have to charge something for it, but I'll keep it very low because I think it's important. And we don't record those because they have to be very confidential, and the group has to be relatively small because I work with each person that brings up an issue, that brings an issue to the table.
Right. Yeah, that's so fantastic. And, as you say, it's something unique when you're in massage school. We do that also in our program where they get supervision. There's a safe place, as you say, a shame-free, safe place to talk about things that come up in the sessions when they're practicing on the public. And then so many therapists, when they graduate, work in isolation. They have their own practice, and they don't necessarily have that built into their support network. Right. So I just think that's really a fantastic feature of your website. Great. So you also have a DVD collection too, right? That's another thing that you have in your, I love your videos because they're so high quality.
Yeah, we hire people that make like Hollywood movies. Those are the people. It's very, very expensive. It takes 2 years of selling DVDs to pay one off for the investment. And over the last 30 years, I've been making high-quality DVDs of my work. And they're usually based on the extensive 4-day trainings we used to do on every part of the body. We do it shorter now because people don't have that kind of time or money. And most of the programs are in discs, like 5 discs each, and we cover the anatomy in great detail. We use cadaver footage. And then we do what I call anatomy palpation and anatomy drawing. And the students draw each structure on the body because it's different when you draw it on a clay structure or you read it in a book. In the low back, for instance, there are 18 ligaments and 2 different muscles that cause most low back pain. And so we draw, and then we do a very long exercise called anatomy palpation. So the therapists find every single structure with their hands. And if they can't, they say, stop the music, and I come over and I help them, and then I start it again.
That's so fantastic.
And then I slowly teach all of the history questions, what they mean, and the assessment tests. In the back, there are 26 tests that we do very slowly. In the neck, there are 40 tests. In the shoulder, there are 30 tests. And that's hard to learn if you learn them slowly. Yeah. And then we put it all together to see what the tests the anatomy and the history tell you. And then we do the friction therapy, the myofascial therapy, the exercise therapy for each and every injury. And in addition to the low back, I have DVD sets for the neck and the knee and the shoulder and the ankle. And then I have other series that are just hands-on body work, which for the low back, the neck, the shoulder, and the knee. So we got like 32 different discs.
Yes, many of those are floating around the Florida School of Massage too. Jackie Ferber, our main kinesiology teacher, teaches drawing, and I know she was a student of yours many moons ago. Came up to Massachusetts to study with you, and I know you too are clearly a lifelong learner, like so many massage therapists and educators. Tell us like what you're excited about now in 2020.
Well, I'm really
next, Ben?
I'm really excited about trying to keep up with the times here. I'm creating an app that's called Pain in the App.
That's
First thing
clever.
is people laugh, so I figure they'll remember it. And I wanted to make something that taught people, both therapists and lay people, everything about the injury process, all the principles, all the foundational concepts, what the assessment was about, what the treatment options were, that I know that are available. And most people don't know those things, and they should. And I wanted to do it very inexpensively. It's a kind of a flip card thing where the app has over 500 questions and answers and explanations, and there are over 650 images, many original anatomy drawings that I had done of things that have never been drawn, like the coronary ligament in the knee. You never see that anywhere. Over 100 cartoons that I had done to add some fun, and hundreds of photos that I had taken especially for this. And there are separate sections for each part of the body. So if you're interested in the back and the neck, you can go into that. If you're interested in the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, the hand, you can go there. Then we have the thigh, the lower leg, the foot, the ankle, every part of the body. And it's a fun learning app that will teach people an incredible amount of stuff on their phone or their tablet. For $10, they'll have it for the rest of their life. And if people are not sure, I also have 53 free questions, over 50 free questions, so people can try it out. I don't want people to buy it, purchase it if they don't know they're going to like it. So they get 50 questions that are taken from all the different parts to see if they're going to like it. And anyone who's tried the beta version, like some of my graduates tried it, they were here, and they had a hard time stopping. You had to tear the phone away from you once they started. So I want to finish this section, and it should be out within the next few months. And
that's so exciting. So you'll have to let us know, and then we'll send an email out to our mailing list. That sounds like an amazing tool. Love to share that with everyone. That's awesome. Now, the other work of yours that I really admire is your book, Ethics of Touch. I know you co-authored that. What was your motivation for writing that book?
Well, let's see. In the 90s, early 90s, I heard there was some sexual abuse that happened by a psychiatrist in Boston who had cancer patients, and he was sleeping with his cancer patients, and it was a whole blow up. And so I was having a class when I had like 34 students from all over the country, and maybe Josie was even there, I don't know. And I asked the class, I said, do you personally know of a sexual abuse issue that happened with someone new? 17 people raised their hand.
Wow.
So I realized that, and then I began writing articles, and because of the articles, many different articles on sexual abuse, boundaries, dual relationships, and so forth that I wrote and had published in massage therapy publications, I was invited to participate in an ethics panel in Boston at one of the universities on sexual abuse prevention in healthcare. I think it was in 1993. And the department heads from the medical schools at Harvard University, Boston University, Amherst Medical School University, and the head of the nursing school at Boston College were all on the panel with me. It was me, Muscular Therapy Institute. It was like, because they had heard I'd done some things.
Sure.
And in the panel, the chairs of the departments reported that the average time spent in medical and nursing school on ethics, sexuality, sexual abuse prevention, and communication skills was between 5 hours for and 14 hours over the course of 4 or 5 years at that time.
Yeah.
And when I spoke about how we at the Muscular Therapy Institute spent at that time 150 hours of our curriculum on ethics, sexuality, sexual abuse prevention, communication, it blew everybody away. And I suddenly realized that my school was light years ahead of all of those medical schools and nursing schools.
Yeah.
And one thing I remember was that it took an average in those schools of 2 or 3 years for them to get rid of a bad teacher that was inappropriate. And
Wow.
that came up in the panel, and I said, well, it took us 2 days. I gave an example of a teacher who had been fired, who was a teacher in training,
Uh-huh.
and he was fired immediately, and he had to go into every single classroom. We had 11 different classes at that time. He had to go and apologize to every single class over the course of a week. And over
Wow.
the next two days, people who weren't even at the panel, and they just heard about my presentation and our school's curriculum and policies, and they were congratulating me. And actually that, to answer your question, that
Yeah.
was the moment that I decided I had to write the book, The Ethics of Touch.
Yeah.
And that led to my expert witness testimony work, because lawyers started calling me up about 15 years ago from the articles and then the book to testify in cases of sexual abuse by massage therapists.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a very important part of our profession, and thank you for that work. It really is an excellent book. I highly recommend it to all of our listeners. And another thing I want to ask you about, so for the first time in history, our history, we are also trying to embrace online education. We had a class just a few weeks from graduation when COVID-19 hit, and we actually had to get them finished, and we had a virtual graduation. And so this question is for our recent graduates and for those students just starting out. I mean, I hear so many words of wisdom from you about lifelong learning, about your mentors and studying what you're excited about. And I wonder, like, what words of wisdom or practical advice you would have for therapists new to our profession and just starting out now in 2020.
So I think it's actually pretty simple. Just do your best work with every single client. Be honest. Don't try to do what you're not skilled at. Just do what you know. Keep studying, keep learning. It never stops. And study what you're interested in, whether it's cranial work or or orthopedic manual therapy or polarity, shiatsu, active assisted stretching, any energy work, whatever it interests you, that's what you want to do. There's always new information. And I guess the most important thing is you're the best advertisement. If you do good work with each and every client, your practice grows. There's something in research that says when something good happens, somebody tells 7 people. When you do something bad that people don't like, they tell 29 people.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you want to have a good reputation, and you want to build your work, always treat everybody, with incredible respect. And also, clients will often ask you a question like, they ask me something I don't know. And I said, well, I'll get back to you. And I'll find that thing. I told you to do water therapy and, you want to get a jacket for that. I can't find it. So I find it for them. And I always follow up with everybody. And I email it to them or tell them the next time they come. And that shows that you respect them, you care about your work. That's my best advice.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much for that. I want to just pause. I mean, the time is going so quickly, as it always does. There's so much to talk about. But I would like to just bring Sarah in on the line with us and ask her if she has any questions or comments from people in the chat that she would like to share with us. Sarah, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
Awesome. A question that we have is, so something that we're hearing from many prospective students as well as new therapists and graduates is they're feeling, especially at this time, pressured to work according to standards and values that don't necessarily match their own. And there kind of is a struggle about how to set those boundaries, how to communicate in those situations. I wonder if you have any advice or what you would say to those therapists.
Well, if you work in a place that doesn't match your values, it's not good for your emotional or your physical health. It's going to kill you slowly. And first thing I would do is I would speak up and voice your concerns. to whoever is your employer. And if the workplace listens to you and changes, that's great. And if the workplace doesn't listen to you and make changes that accommodate you to make you feel good about your work there, then it's not the right place to work. I'll give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, my wife is a hospice nurse, and she'd been working for a company for quite a while, and she had told them about the boundaries of what she did and what she couldn't do. And then one day they just made her do the thing that she said she would never do. They violated her boundary. She talked to them. They didn't listen. And so she took one day to leave the job, and she quickly found another job that would respect her boundaries. So sometimes people are afraid that, oh, I quit my job, I won't find anything else. Well, when there's a vacuum, something fills it. If you're a good person, you're a good therapist, you're going to find another job. Don't work in places that demean you, that don't allow you to be safe, especially in these times. You want to be safe.
Excellent answer. Yeah. What else, Sarah?
Yeah, thank you for that. Another question I have from a physical therapy student is he was noticing that he felt limited in he was looking forward to being a physical therapist in the future, and he noticed that, well, that's going to limit me in my time with a client, but he's currently a physical therapy assistant. He gets to spend the time, but he doesn't get to direct the session as much. I wonder if you could speak. He was wondering, will my experience get to be different as a massage therapist if I took training? I wonder if you could speak to the experience of working with clients and directing the sessions. What's that been like for you?
Well, I would have it no other way. I've been self-employed since I was 19 years old or something.
Sure.
Except that one stint where I worked for Kagan, which was the person I loved. So, yes, PTs are very limited in how much time they can spend with each person. That's for sure. Being both a massage therapist and a physical therapist is a great combination because you have all sorts of skills available to you. But if you have to choose one, you have to consider kind of what's to you. So being a physical therapist gives you really a lot of financial security. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to go out and necessarily get your own clients. It comes easier because you're covered by insurance. Being a massage therapist gives you more freedom in your work. Also, being a massage therapist gives you certain opportunities. The way you get both freedom and security is by being a talented entrepreneur as well as a good therapist. Now, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you hate it, that's not your thing, you likely won't make a very good living. And if that's important to you, you've got to consider that. So you have to know yourself and choose what's best for you.
Excellent advice. And as you said earlier, it's one of the joys of being in the massage profession is that we do get to give a full hour of our attention to our clients in a session typically. And that is a rare thing these days in the medical field. So that's definitely a bonus. And we have actually, at the Florida School of Massage, I'm sure you too, Ben, when you had your school in Massachusetts, we have had lots of physicians, maybe retired physicians or PTs or occupational therapists, chiropractors, coming through the massage program just for that added benefit of what they might want to include in their practice.
Yeah, we actually made a special program for physicians and physical therapists at one point, and we were running a special program that was a little bit shorter and intense for them, and they loved it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's great. What else, Sarah? Any other questions for us?
Oh, I think maybe we can land on what do you think are the most important principles from your SAVI communication training?
Ah, that's a good one.
Okay. Well, the most important thing about SAVI, which stands for the System for Analyzing Verbal Interaction, is that it can teach almost anyone to be a better communicator. It shows you it's not what you say, but it's how you say it that's important in communicating. SAVI breaks down all communication into behaviors. So it's very specific and concrete, which I love. It kind of gives you X-ray vision and X-ray hearing, so you can see and hear what's wrong in a conversation. For example, if a person says, that person wasn't very respectful, I don't know exactly what that means. When did that happen? What did they say? But SAVI breaks it down. It doesn't say that kind of thing. It breaks it down into observable behaviors. So, for example, the person said, "How could you do that?" Now, that's an attack in the form of a question. And in SAVI, we call that a righteous question, which isn't really a question. You're not really asking for an answer. Or, that's not a very good idea. That's what we call a discount. It's kind of putting somebody down. Or, that'll never work. We tried that before. That's what we call a negative prediction. Or, you're so ungrateful. That could be, and that's an attack.
Yeah.
You're talking about gratefulness. Or I could just say it quietly. You're so ungrateful. That's an attack. So those are some of the behaviors that actually show disrespect and make us upset.
Yes.
It's not necessarily what you say, it's how you say it. What's important.
I remember, this is just a little personal note, when you first came to the Florida School of Massage to do SAVI training, I was in the middle of a fight with my brother, I remember. And of course, it was all his fault, the way that he was communicating. And of course, I was communicating perfectly. But after doing the first half day of your course, I realized, I have to change the way that I'm communicating if I want to be heard by my brother. So it was such actually a very empowering and, in a way, like depersonalizing the who said what. It's really just about, how is the information getting across? Is it being received by the other person? And that was a very empowering technique to learn. I think of that story all the time because it was so personal at the moment, where I was blaming him.
The only person you can change in communication is yourself. Exactly. And people usually come with their partner or their business partner. They change him, change her. You have the person. You're the only person you can change. You can't change somebody else. You can only be a good role model that inspires people. I remember when I was doing some work, some intensive work in groups, people saw me change and wanted to know what I was doing to do that change. And that's how you get people to change.
And that was my experience at the Florida School of Massage too. As we started out saying, I really did feel that I gathered all these skills to be the best human being that I can be in the world, and just notice that ripple effect in my life as well. So Ben, we have one more question for you, and we've been asking everyone that we've been live streaming with this question. And at the Florida School of Massage, we always talk about massage as this career that allows you to really live life on your own terms. And obviously you've done that, but I wonder if you could just share with our listeners, what does that mean to you to live life on your own terms?
I have definitely lived life on my own terms. Almost everything I have done in my life is not traditional or conventional. I don't engage in things I don't like. I don't hang out with people whose values I don't agree with. My friends are all people of the highest integrity. When I was a boy, I wanted to become a professional dancer. Not the usual thing for a boy to do.
Sure.
Then I created my own massage technique called muscular therapy, because when I started, massage was associated with massage parlors, and the other people who were in the profession were not very skilled. There were only like 10 or 15 schools in the whole country. Right. And then the psychotherapy that helped me turn my life around was a therapy out of the mainstream that was based on the theory that the emotions were trapped in the body and made us emotionally unhealthy. It was called orgone therapy, developed by a doctor named Wilhelm Reich. He was one of the only people in the United States to be persecuted by the government and have all of his books burned because he was so ahead of psychiatry that his work just threatened them. Yeah. And then I've been eating organic foods since I've been 19. I opened a health food store when I was like 24 or something. That was not the usual thing at the time. And I could go on, but you get the idea.
I do. I get the idea. And I just want to thank you so much, Ben, for joining us. It's just a pleasure to have you here. And for those of you listening, if you're interested in Dr. Benjamin's teaching or coaching, you can contact him at drben@benbenjamin.com, or you can call him as well. And we'll put all that information in the show notes for you too. So when you go to YouTube or Facebook, all that'll be in the replay. You can also visit his website, benjamininstitute.com. And you can also check out his books, Listen to Your Pain, Are You Tense, Exercise Without Injury, The Ethics of Touch, and Conversation and Transformation. And we also have a special event next week. We will be doing our next live stream next Thursday, June 25th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Ben, and he will be presenting a free crash course on the subscapularis tendon injury. And this is one of the most common injuries we see in the shoulder. And we'll send out an email reminder, and I really hope you can join us. And if you enjoyed your time with us today, you can subscribe to our channel, to our YouTube channel, by hitting the subscribe button below. And you can also hit the like button and share it with your friends. And you can also click the notification buttons to get a reminder. You can follow us and like this video on Facebook. And if you want to learn more about our school, you can visit our website, theFloridaschoolofmassage.com. You can register there for our live streams and our newsletter, and you can contact us there too, and we'd be happy to connect with you and share more information and keep you informed about our new class starting, and even set up a live call so we can actually see you person to person or computer to computer for now. And again, thanks so much, Ben, and thanks, Chrissy and Sarah, for all your behind-the-scenes support. And it's been such a joy to be together. So until next time, stay safe, be good to one another, and bye for now. We'll see you soon, I hope.